Thank you very much for the invitation, for having me here. I'm really excited to be here, and I'll be reading my talk. But please don't see this gesture as a formal move, because it's just so I can control my time. And so let's go. When I was kindly invited by Eleanor to participate in Gestations, I initially thought of discussing my research, the subjects I have been exploring in the Max Planck Institute for the History of Science. Currently, I work as a postdoctoral researcher in the Proteins and Fibers Group, Department Action, Artifacts, and Knowledge. And I'm dealing with the topic of how biocompatibility of non-human animals' bodies and human animal bodies interact in a discrete yet persistent way in the history of medicine. However, I feel it wouldn't be appropriate to delve into the details of my research here. Instead, I would like to use this opportunity in Gestation as a space to created to be horizontal and therefore powerful, to reflect on my practice as a historian, as a cisgender woman, as a feminist, as a queer person, as a Latin living in the global north. Yesterday, in the same room, we had a preliminary discussion on how to organize our talks today. And I listened to my brilliant colleagues, and I realized that this was an opportunity not so much to deliver a speech with a chronological, organized beginning, middle, end, which is important in the academic setting, but to share with the audience some discomforts I have been experienced in historical research, and how it's possible to deal with these academic estrangements and discomforts. Like our exercise yesterday, which started with the question, how do you relate to the theme of the event, gestation? I will start there. Perhaps my connection with the theme is somewhat obvious. I am a historian of cesarean section and abortion in Latin America. Perhaps the theme is important to me because 53% of the children born in Brazil last year were delivered by a cesarean section, placing the country in second in the global ranking of this procedure. Maybe because I myself was born through a medically unnecessary cesarean section, scheduled for a national holiday, Independence Day. In the case of abortion, my interest might be related to the fact that abortion is illegal in Brazil, only permitted in 3 cases: pregnancy of anencephalic fetus, pregnancy resulting of violence, or abortion to save pregnant person's life. This last case is exactly the topic I explored in my master thesis. Okay, now a bit of context. Human childbirth is complex. For evolutionary reasons, we are capable of speaking, of thinking, and this gave us large heads, which is not exactly good for childbirth. And moreover, we also decided to walk in 2 legs, which significantly reduced the size of our species pelvis, making the skull to pelvis ratio quite narrow. All this to say that 15% of our species births require some sort of intervention, and this is a historical problem. This problem also has historical solutions. If a person is in labor for a long time and it appears the process won't progress spontaneously, surgeons had at least 2 alternatives. First, a cesarean operation. Until about 1930s, this meant a death sentence for the pregnant person. The other alternative, therapeutic abortion. The decision at stake was the primacy of the pregnant person's life or the preservation of the fetus. And who was moved? To my surprise, as a young historian born and raised in a highly conservative country, therapeutic abortion in Brazil, like in many Western contexts, was the most chosen way to resolve difficult childbirth. In the medical literature, I consulted for Brazilian context of the entire 19th century, almost the entire 19th century. Therapeutic abortion was defended by doctors on the grounds that fetus was just a plant, just a vegetable, in no way could be compared with the importance and social relevance of the mother, who, if she underwent a cesarean section, would be doomed. Moreover, these doctors claimed that although the Bible did not openly state that it would be correct to induce abortion for health reasons, it didn't matter, as it was obvious that the role of the mother would be infinitely more important than a fetus that might not even be viable. Furthermore, these doctors argue that therapeutic abortion would be much easier to perform than a cesarean section. As Professor Mary can tell us better, abortion is an ancient, well-known practice. And since gestation, there has been also abortion. Indeed, therapeutic abortion was a complex surgical technique, but less complex than cesarean section. It was scandalous to me. Brazilian doctors from the conservative elite defending abortion, something so distant from the current reality, where people who are subjected to police investigations and constraints, even to access legal abortion for health reasons, and religious fundamentalist groups camp outside public hospitals to harass patients and medical staff performing the procedure. While researching the topic, I noticed that from the 1870s onwards, the number of medical reports in favor of medical abortion began to decline sharply. I looked for some reason, and I discovered that after centuries of theological and philosophical debate about the beginning of the life, the Catholic Church took a decision. The Pope Pius IX, through the papal bull Quanta Cura, published in 1864, declared that there should be a consensus on the matter of fetal soul. Thus, the Church decided the beginning of the life as the moment of conception. When I realized that the abortion alternative had been shut down by the Catholic Church, I asked what was left in the context to deal with complicated childbirth. The answer was cesarean section. However, I mentioned earlier that cesarean section was at late 19th century a death sentence for the patient. And cutting is not the hardest part of cesarean section. Rather, is stitching, closing, healing, ensuring that this person could even bear more children. This began my doctoral dissertation and on the history of development of cesarean section in Brazil, a surgery that in some ways took away from us, people with a womb in Brazil, the chance to have the right to abortion. It's not uncommon for fundamentalist groups to approach pregnant people and try to dissuade them to have an abortion by saying, oh, you don't have to go for an abortion. You just have to wait a little longer and soon you can have a cesarean section and give the baby up for adoption. Studying the history of cesarean section was to study how to normalize a highly risky, chaotic, dangerous, and terrifying new technique was made possible. The shift from therapeutic abortion to cesarean section in late 19th century meant for the medical collectives to learn to deal with the abdominal body, with guts, secretions, and complexities of this emerging body. What was needed to normalize cesarean section, I wonder? As I read the medical reports from the early 20th century, I noticed that breaking the tradition of cesarean resulting in patient's death was a tremendous effort, but whose effort? As a historian of medicine, I can say that development in surgery is always related to experimentation on the most vulnerable bodies, and in the case of cesarean section, it was no different. Public hospitals in major urban centers in Brazil were linked to educational institutions, and people who couldn't receive care anywhere else sought this establishment to receive the minimum, a bed to give birth, a chance to bath, and to receive food. Black bodies of poor people, single parents, all were subject to the improvement of cesarean section, being perfect through the trial and error, a process indeed violent and vertical against these patients. Anesthetics, sutures, surgical materials, electric power, blood transfusions, all these non-human agents are often associated in the literature as being responsible for making cesarean section possible. But what does this phrase hide? What causes me discomfort, and what I want to share with you is that attributing the non-human factors, technology in general, the success of cesarean section hides the way in which vulnerable bodies were used by medical practice as a means to gain surgical skill. The cesarean section in Brazil today reaches 98% in private hospitals in São Paulo, being performed as grand spectacles that involve professional photographers, crafting of personalized souvenirs with the baby's name, and a large sum of money for the most popular obstetricians. Expanding my discomfort, I ask who is subject to technology in the context where it's being tested, and whom does it serve when it's finally normalized? Who are the people who are being historically erased from the process of technical improvement? How do non-human agents interact with vulnerable bodies? I have a guess, but I really want to know. Thank you.